I wasn't able to cut down on the amount of calls. It was like there was increased calls. There was no break. I felt guilty if I was actually having a break. I knew that when my phone rang, it was going to be important, and you just didn't feel like you were getting any break from the role.
It's not just a job for any of us. We are technically a lifeline. There's Isla. There's Isla. Really?
Hello, hello.
Before lockdown, home life was home life. I think that's the biggest thing. Home life was home life with the kids. Up in the morning, school run, and then I'm at work, I'm at a police station, or I'm in the office and I'm me and I'm ready for the day to go and speak to survivors, deal with police officers, be embedded in whatever is going to come at me. I don't think I ever appreciated the drive home, of being able to switch off, because you go to work and you're your work person, you come home and your mum. I had to steal my daughter's desk and put it in the lounge because I started working in my room and realised actually that was almost contaminating my room. I wasn't sleeping because the stuff you get on the calls obviously can be really, really distressing.
I can't stop thinking about what it must be like for women in particular, you know, women and girls who are stuck with their families or their partners who may be abusive.
The majority of victims live with multiple perpetrators who are parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, you know, extended family networks. And I think it's about having some appreciation for how difficult accessing help when you're locked down with multiple perpetrators can be.
There was a real change in the way contact was being made. Often you would expect to get domestic abuse calls during the day when someone's at work, when their partner's at work. But suddenly we were seeing far more calls in the evening, presumably to be in time with when a perpetrator went out for their daily exercise after working from home.
Unfortunately, it happening at the end of March, that is when budgets and I've run a local small organisation that lived hand to mouth each year, not knowing what was coming the following year. So I was only too aware that we were entering into this pandemic. We were going to see a massive increase in both risk and demand at certain points, and that organisations were not sustainably funded for the following year, and they were about to run out of money.
Since COVID, I don't think I thought I knew what busy was. I now know what busy means. I have worked in the violence against women sector for over 25 years now, and I have never been so busy.
I think that we're going to have to embrace this brave new world of supporting clients online, and I still have that reservation about how much of that is about real recovery for people. How can you do anyway? I suppose as a clinician, I would say, how can we do recovery for people when they're living in a state of fear and anxiety because of COVID?
They were calling this, the domestic abuse, a shadow pandemic.
It felt like we were only doing half a job, yet despite I was working longer hours, all of those uncertain things we couldn't answer. It made me feel helpless, made me feel really inadequate in my role.
So it is 7:15 on a Thursday evening, and I'm on shift tonight until 9 o'clock in the morning. I had some not so great news this week about a friend of mine, which set me back a little bit. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about tonight's shift, just because obviously when your own emotions are raw, sometimes you then know you've got to block that out and help other people, because actually right now they've got their emotions raw and they need you. Kids are having a movie night, them two together. And I'm currently sat down with a cup of tea and going to do some studying at my desk with my laptop, and keep checking the inbox and keep my phone with me. So wait and see what kind of evening it brings. Yeah. helpline today. It is a Tuesday and already inundated with cases, which is quite normal, but just had an extremely distressed female and spent quite a while on the phone. It was quite difficult because she was almost hyperventilating, and she's at that point she's come to realise enough is enough, and she's had to support police and she doesn't know where to go next, and she just felt that everything was over, her life was it, that was it, everything was being pulled out from underneath her. You know, she was very disbelief that anything's ever going to be better, she's ever going to get anywhere, so I was able to share some, you know, professional and personal tips, and yeah, she calmed right down. So now I'm just taking a breather. That's one call done, have a coffee, go over my emails, type some notes up, and then on to the next one. And obviously I don't know what I'll face when I pick up the call. Take each call as it comes, really.
It is a lot when you're talking about people's children and then you go and make a sandwich for your own children, and you can be left alone at night with the thoughts of, well, what if I'd done this, or what's happening to that person right now?
The person going back to work is taking their trauma back with them to work. They might have been triggered, their own abuse might have been triggered, because the reality is lots of us end up in this profession because of our own experiences. We don't trip into it, you know, so that might have been triggered. You're also going back into an unsafe potential environment. You might have pressure on you to do things that you don't really want to do. You might have had to send your kids back to school when you don't want to send them back to, you know, all of those things.
Anyone who works in a support service like that, you are used to having what we would call clinical supervision, and that, you know, it sounds considerably fancier than often what it is, which is the ability to speak with other people in your working environment and offload the things that you are hearing and ensure that you are not alone in that now.
Essentially, we've taken on so much of the trauma, so much of the pain that's impacted us from our lived experiences. That pain and trauma gets passed down into our heart, and again, that's not built to sustain these kind of burden on any kind of long-term basis.
One of the things that we've asked our staff to do is bring very traumatic work into their own homes. So we have spent quite a long time, and we've had long team sessions. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about boundaries. We're very clear with as a sector about boundaries, but COVID spun that on its head, because, you know, you're asking women to take those stories often into their bedrooms, actually, because that's the quietest place to work, or their living rooms or kitchens or whatever. And that does have an impact. You know, vicarious trauma is real.
As a key worker, my children are still able to go to school, but I've just done the school run of, you know, some form of normality, juggling that with being on the helpline. Got back, the girls obviously want me to themselves, but I've had a call come straight in the moment we've stepped in the door. The girls were having a bit of a sisterly squabble in the background. Unfortunately, that client then revealed she'd had her children taken away due to the domestic abuse. So my children in the background was not helping. And sometimes that's the issue. Sometimes it can really break the ice, and sometimes it can make things worse unintentionally. Usually that's not an issue. When I'm at work, the children are in, you know, school or childminders or their family, and obviously having to be careful that they don't hear me. And sometimes you have really distressing situations on the phone, or, you know, I've had a time when there was a suicidal client and I've had to then ring police and an ambulance and sort that and keep myself calm whilst trying to keep the boundaries of making sure the children aren't aware. It is now 5 in the morning, and I'm usually very good at, you know, work's work, shutting off, not being cold, but you have to have those boundaries and be very, you know, resilient and strong. Just had a case, and I don't know what it was. It's not the most horrific disclosures I've had or for a horrific thing I've seen, I just burst into tears. I absolutely crumbled. You know, it even gets us, and unexpectedly. And actually, I'm at a point now, it's okay to cry sometimes. It doesn't mean I can't do my job. It doesn't mean I'm weak. It doesn't mean, you know, that I can't face things or hear horrible things or see horrible things. It's because I'm human and I care, you know, and we feel it. We get what they're going through, and some of the things they say, especially myself as being a survivor myself, some things that other survivors and victims will say to me or us, they resonate, and sometimes it's like listening to me all those years ago, which, you know, I knew that coming into the job, and that's why I love doing this.
Start of lockdown to now, there hasn't been one session where one of us hasn't cried, and I would include myself in that, because it's hard. It's really hard. You know, lockdown's hard enough anyway, and you know, now all of a sudden we're key workers and really important, but we're all working from our crappy laptops at home, and also dealing with lockdown.
We're not prepared. You know, we don't have the tools to respond to all women. You know, when we say we want to help safeguard women and girls, we have to say all. You know, we can't choose and pick which women and girls are getting that support. So I think it was really scary to think that this isn't support and help for everyone. And who would have thought something like a world pandemic would have exposed, you know, that one thing that, because it's a very scary fact. It's very, very scary to think that this is affecting millions of girls and women, you know, disproportionately to men, because that's, unfortunately, that's the case with gender-based abuse.
I really hope that the government take that, you know, into consideration when they have some sense of normality and accessing services that they were pre-lockdown. We've got to be expecting that, you know, things will probably get a lot worse before they get better. So it's about being prepared for that.
And I want that to change. I want the idea of domestic abuse, that if you work with people, you're working with victims of domestic abuse or perpetrators of domestic abuse. It is all of our business. Governments have got to stop thinking it is just one little part of the Home Office and we'll do some little thing about it. It has got to be core concern, just like our health service is a core concern, and the domestic abuse sector would be much better served by that level of priority.
I will always remember from COVID and the lockdown period how humbled I am by the women I work with. Their resilience and tenacity and passion for supporting women is just, yeah, breathtaking. They have gone above and beyond, turning their services around, every single one of them, and not once has one of them moaned. Not once. They've all just been, yeah, we'll do it. What do you need me to do? And that is the feminist-led violence against women sector to me.
I would say that people are tired. I would say that people are incredibly committed, but that it has been a lot of work, and it will continue to be a lot of work, and we know that. Yeah, I think that's where we are.
We're talking about people, humans, who, when they have been raped, beaten, controlled and abused, before we ask them how we can help, first, we ask what stamp is in their passport. This cannot be right.
Roxanne, did you want to come in on that?
I think if I had to comment just on what's happened during lockdown and this digital project and the Hope meetings that Mina's launched and has been chairing so successfully throughout the whole period, I've never had an opportunity to meet with all the women in this room and all the people that have been coming to these meetings. It's the coronavirus silver lining. If you have to find something positive in such darkness, I think this is it for me.
I never considered myself an activist really before, or an advocate, but actually as this 3-4 months has gone on, I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm at. And there is so many other women to be aligned to so many powerful and empowered women who are from Black and Asian and other backgrounds has been absolutely incredible. And the Hope meetings has actually been the highlight in this kind of really negative space. This has actually been a beacon and something positive out of it, where I do feel that our voice is actually now finally being heard.
But I can honestly say that what the Hope calls have given a platform for is taking away all the hierarchy of important people and allowing the people who know exactly what the issues are, what the solutions can be, to come together with a consensus of what we can do, the power of women working together.